Matt, a lot of people say, I hear it said around and about in Wyre Forest, that those with disabilities have been unfairly targeted in the last 5 years. That and that there's a real perception that people with disabilities have been demonised. And just thinking about ATOS and the change from disability living allowance to personal independence plan, talk of cutting the DLF and carers allowance, and the bedroom tax, which has affected people with disabilities really disproportionately. What is Labour going to do about people with disabilities? And I've heard Conservative Party members say, well, the really important thing is equality and getting people with disabilities into work.
I think there is. I mean, well, firstly, I just want to speak from a personal perspective because I've got a lot of experience of living with disability. Because my mother, who very sadly died, unfortunately, of the disease, she had multiple sclerosis, and so when I was a child and my mother was in a wheelchair, I saw very first hand, the challenges my dad faced as a carer, because he had to give up work as a teacher to look after my mother, and my mother was in a wheelchair, and her disease very sadly it deteriorated. So I saw from a very first perspective the challenges my father faced as a carer, that my mother faced as someone who had to deal with this. And as you say, if you take the bedroom tax, the bedroom tax is the evidence is, and there was a case brought under the Human Rights Act that the bedroom tax was found to be discriminatory against people with disability, because someone with disability might need a spare room, for example, for equipment or for whatever it might be, and so getting rid of the bedroom tax would help people. I believe where possible, people with disabilities should be helped into employment, but the trouble with ATOS is that, and I worked for the DSS for a while actually, so again I saw this firsthand, is the trouble with ATOS is ATOS was it was farmed out to a private company, and they were given a remit to reduce the amount of benefits that people were getting. And therefore, they had very little sensitivity to people's conditions. It was all worked out using computer algorithms, computer programs. So there was none of that kind of personal understanding of people as human beings, and therefore, I thought ATOS was a disgrace in terms of it was about demonising people. I think where possible, where people do want to work and are able to work, then the benefit system and the education system should be designed in such a way to help people into employment. But it's also, people with disabilities face a great deal of discrimination as well, and they need to be protected against discrimination in employment, discrimination in housing, discrimination in the street. People are very unpleasant to people with disabilities sometimes, so that needs to be dealt with. But it is also ensuring that our public service, that housing is adequately equipped to ensure that people with disabilities are looked after. But also, and the Labour Party has been very keen on this, it's about thinking about the carers, the people who care for disabled people. I was talking to someone on the doorstep literally a few days ago, and they were talking about their struggle of dealing with someone on a day-to-day basis who couldn't be left behind, left alone at all, with a disability. And therefore the Labour Party is very, very keen on giving people with disabilities and people who look after them a respite from their care, because it is an incredibly difficult job, and so the Labour Party is very keen on that. But it is about looking at how we can look after those and making sure the cuts don't fall on the most vulnerable in society, because that is what's happening.
So how's the Labour Party going to do that?
Well, it is about looking at the money that we spend and making sure that people on disability are not discriminated against and helping them.